ignition. GRR.
The launch of Apollo 7 on October 11, 1968 saw several firsts for NASA. It was the first manned flight in the Apollo program, the first to feature a three-man crew, the first to broadcast live TV, and the first test of the Block 2 command module that would take men around the moon.
Next, the spacecraft and S-4B stage were separated. The question now was whether the astronauts could turn their spacecraft around and control it to the degree required for future physical link-ups with equipment in space. For this, too, would have to be done in the lunar flight.
And it wasn't without its problems. The spacecraft leaked. Following splashdown, both the docking tunnel and cabin windows filled with seawater.
Remarkably successful tests yet of man and machine in space.
Post-flight analysis found the sealant used between the metal and glass in 3 of the 5 windows decomposed due to temperature and pressure. Soon after Earth orbital insertion, a film appeared on surfaces 2 and 3 of the hatch and side windows of the Apollo 7 and 8 command modules. This contamination continued to accumulate during flight and resulted in a heavy film in some locations and droplet formation in other locations. During the night pass of the spacecraft in Earth orbit and during other similar cold window conditions, the contamination seemed to crystallize and become opaque, particularly on the hatch window.
4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
And it was a problem that would not be solved before the flight of Apollo 8, NASA's first lunar mission that launched just 2 months later on December 21, 1968. The final report even states the condition of the windows was so bad they were usable for visual observations, but not for photography. So exactly how were the crew of Apollo 8 able to capture this, the famous Earthrise photo?
Could you tell the story of taking Earthrise?
We had, I think they gave me a little bit of photography training. I had a camera I took home, a Hasselblad, took a few pictures, but, didn't even have a light meter on our flight.
Oh, I know Apollo 8 astronaut Bill Anders was 90 when he gave this interview, but over the years he has persisted with this story about not having any photography training or a light meter.
So I grabbed a camera, and even though there had been no instructions, no plan, no light meters or anything, and I was shooting right, left, one thing that I don't think we had a light meter. The NASA had calculated what the reflected light would be depending on our longitude, which depend on our time.
The truth, however, is that most of the training for Apollo 8 was in orbital science observations and photography, which in Lovell and Anders' case involved sessions dealing with photographic details such as what camera, what lens, what settings and film to use under different lunar lighting conditions.
At the same time that I'm doing the navigation, Bill, and I think you'll cover this, will be taking photography of certain areas. Bill, you want to continue?
We have several passes scheduled for strip photography of the lunar surface in order to get a better idea of some of the portions of the moon which the orbiter didn't cover too well. We'll also be doing photographs of the landing site for sites that are available depending on what day we go, the ones that Jim is tracking on. And we'll be doing some dark side photography with some high-speed film. And we have a roughly 1,200 exposures available to us, which we'll be using for targets of opportunity of various kinds.
As for not having a light meter, This is the spot meter developed by Minolta for NASA and first used on Apollo 8. According to NASA, it's a light meter that provides accurate exposure information. Here, Anders is taking a 16mm movie of Borman tossing the spot meter around like it's a cheap toy.
There's nothing in the lens you can burn out. The camera still seems to be working. We can give you a lumens reading of the Earth right now if you'd like.
And in this live TV broadcast from Apollo 8, Anders can be seen looking through the spot meter before handing it to Borman to take a light reading of the Earth.
Okay, I just got a reading on the Earth, Houston. It's 320.
So even though NASA computed the f-stop for specific targets during the mission, the idea that Anders was ill-informed or ill-equipped to capture photos of the Earth is not true.
We had no training on taking a picture of the Earth. We were supposed to be taking pictures of the lunar surface.
Because nowhere in NASA's schedule was it, oh, take pictures of the Earth while you're up.
Exactly, right.
Apart from 14 photos where the Earth can be seen over the lunar horizon, more than 150 of the other 850 photos captured during the mission are of the Earth from various distances all the way to the Moon and back.
Because nowhere in NASA's schedule was it, oh, take pictures of the Earth while you're up.
Exactly, right. We had Hasselblad 70mm cameras with a magazine that held 200 exposures of thin-based film. Looking back at the Earth, I'm thinking, man, that's pretty. I wonder what the right f-stop would be. Well, I always took 3 or 4. We had no training on taking a picture of the Earth.
What did you say, Frank?
Anders was official photographer.
If we can't rely on an old man to tell the story behind Earthrise, then perhaps it's best we go back to January 1969, the month after Apollo 8 returned from its historic trip around the moon, and read what the crew had to say in an interview they gave to Life magazine when it was still fresh in everyone's mind. So Borman claims it was he who took the photos of the Earth, that too only after convincing Anders to give him a camera. 20 years later, and Borman's account of the event in his autobiography Countdown mentions nothing of any discussion with Anders, only how he grabbed a camera to snap the now famous Earthrise photo.
When we saw this site, I said, Anders, for goodness sake, get that site. And he was kidding me, and he said, oh, I don't have film for that. It's not on the schedule.
And by 1998, while sticking to the original story about having to convince Anders before taking the photo himself,
I won't repeat what I said to him. But I got a camera and took a picture, but my picture was black and white. Anders took that picture.
Borman did at least acknowledge it was Anders who took the Earthrise photo, but in colour.
Researched, and I think almost everybody.
At the same time, Anders acknowledged Borman's claim to the first Earthrise photo in black and white.
Frank, we found out recently, took the first Earthrise, but it was in black and white.
You can understand the reason for all the confusion over who took what when Anders explains how he floated a black and white camera over to Borman and they were all yelling for cameras and snapping away.
And so, boy, there was a mad scramble for cameras. Each guy had one, started firing off. I was lucky because I had one with a long lens and color film.
Though Anders' recollection pretty much confirms what Borman said in his autobiography about grabbing a camera, he later claimed it was he, not Borman, who first noticed the Earth popping up over the lunar horizon.
Suddenly, something caught my eye, and I looked over there, and here was this gorgeous view of the Earth. And I said something like, my gosh, look at that. And I grabbed a camera with color film and started taking pictures. And Frank Borman jokingly said, hey, Bill, you can't do that. It's not on the flight plan.
And contrary to Borman's claim that Anders was reluctant to take unscheduled photos, it was Borman who said, hey, Bill, you can't do that. It's not on the flight plan. when Anders started snapping photos of the Earth over the horizon. This is where the entire Earthrise story falls apart. You see, there were only 2 still cameras aboard Apollo 8. Now let's listen to what actually happened in this recreation of events by NASA's very own Goddard Scientific Visualization Studio.
Bill Anders was in the right-hand seat, observing the moon through his side window and taking pictures with a Hasselblad still camera fitted with a 250mm telephoto lens. Meanwhile, a second Hasselblad with an 80mm lens was mounted in Borman's front-facing window, the so-called rendezvous window, photographing the moon on an automatic timer, a new picture every 20 seconds.
Oh my God, look at that picture over there. There's the Earth coming up. Wow, is that pretty. Hey, don't take that, it's not scheduled.
So it was Anders who noticed the Earth rising over the lunar horizon, and it was Borman who said,
Hey, don't take that, it's not scheduled.
when he saw Anders taking photos of the Earthrise. There simply was no discussion with Anders, at least none recorded on Apollo 8. So which camera did Borman use to take his black and white photo? According to the NASA video, the second of 2 Hasselblad cameras was taking this sequence of photos at the time the crew saw the Earth. And you can see it was taken at 16:38:17 in the timeline. This is the photo on magazine D. It's third from the right in the panorama, and it's followed by 11 more photos taken at 20-second intervals, which would mean the camera was busy snapping photos for a further 3 minutes 40 seconds until at least 16:41:57 in the timeline. According to the NASA video, Borman snapped his photo at 16:38:44 in the timeline, so he couldn't have used the second Hasselblad camera, besides which he would have had to change both the lens and magazine. Because his photo can be found on magazine E, and it was taken with the 250mm long lens that Anders claims he used to capture this colour photo on magazine B. So was the first Hasselblad camera used to capture both black and white and colour Earthrise photos?
And I was shooting right, left, and
Anders claimed he was clicking here and there when he noticed the Earth. Not that either Borman or Anders mentioned it, but if Borman had grabbed Anders' camera to take a photo, it stands to reason the last photo Anders took must be the one immediately prior to Borman's on magazine E. That would be frame 2328, captured at latitude 17 south, longitude 140 east, when the sun was at 57 degrees. We know that the second camera was automatically taking sequential shots on magazine D, and looking at the frame index for that magazine, when the command module was at 140 east, it was at 14 south, and it never went farther south than that, and the sun angle was at 66 degrees. So the only way the same camera could have been used to take both Earthrise photos is if Anders and Borman are lying about what happened. Anders also claims to have taken multiple shots of the Earth.
so I just took the f-stop and just took a shot, moved it, took a shot, moved it, and I just kept snapping and turning the f-stop. I grabbed a camera, pointed it at the Earth, and put a long lens on the camera after the first couple of shots, and got color film and started clicking away by changing the f-stop.
Anders can only be referring to these 14 shots of Earthrise on magazine B because there are no other coloured photos of Earthrise, and there's only the one black and white photo that Borman claimed, so Anders is lying about everyone grabbing a camera and snapping away, including himself. You see, apart from the first two photos, the others were not only taken with an 80mm lens, they were taken at a completely different time. This photo was the first to be taken with the 80mm lens. That's why the Earth appears smaller. And here, the first Earthrise photo taken with the 250mm lens has been scaled down and overlaid to match the size of the Earth. As you can see, the Earth has rotated around 30 degrees, which is around 2 hours later, the time it would take for the spacecraft to orbit the moon. Anders sounds like a man trying to convince himself how it happened.
Put a long lens on the camera. I had fought to have a long lens and color film. I didn't have a light meter, just banged off a dozen or so pictures, changing the f-stop each click.
Contrary to what he claims, he did in fact have a light meter. And all the f-stops on the photos are the same. It's bad enough these cohorts couldn't agree beforehand on who did what, but the fact they were not even aware that only one camera was available at the time confirms they were not where they claimed to be, which is taking photos on a spacecraft orbiting the moon. As with any fabricated story, it all starts to unravel once the facts come to light, which is why they had to come to a consensus to explain something that never happened.
Well, I've asked Borman and Lovell this question, I'll ask you too. There's a famous photograph, the Earthrise photograph. Now, who took that photograph?
Well, that has been researched, and I think almost everybody now will admit that I happened to take the photograph that was replicated on the stamp.